Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Knauer and welcome to Carrie's Kitchen. Today we have a kebab recipe that uses chicken, fresh vegetables, and then a marinade made out of citrus and tarragon. It's got this really fresh and zippy taste and I think you're going to enjoy it. Are you ready to cook? Our first step is that we're going to want to soak our skewers, especially if you're using bamboo or wooden ones. This is to help prevent them from catching on fire when they're on their really hot grill. And I think you want to give that at least 20 minutes. Alright, now I'm going to dig right in and start cutting up my chicken breast. I'm working with boneless breast here, and I'm going to cut it into about 1-inch square pieces. You really want to try to cut these evenly as possible so that they'll cook at the same rate when they're on the grill. Once they're all cut, I put them back into my bowl so that they'll be ready for the marinade, which we're going to make now. First, I'm going to start by zesting my fruit. I'm going to zest a whole orange and then a lime. I'm using a citrus zester, but you can also use a microplaner. Now we're going to cut the fruit in half so that we can put it on our juicer and get those great fresh juices. Fresh juice always has the most flavor. Alright, I'm going to cut up some garlic cloves. And I like to put mine through a mincer. I find it easier than chopping it into tiny little pieces. And here's the tarragon. I just fold it up and cut it in scissors, that way you don't have to worry about using a knife on something so small. It has a really strong taste though, with a little bit hint of licorice in it. Now we're going to measure the vegetable oil to add to it, followed by the soy sauce. And I like to use a low sodium soy sauce so that it doesn't overpower things. I'm going to give it a good stir, and then we're going to pour it on top of our chicken. You're going to want to let that marinate for at least a half an hour. I try to stir it to make sure that each piece is covered. Now we're going to wash off our mushrooms. Mushrooms can be tricky. If you put them directly under a running faucet, it's just too much moisture. So I'm using a damp paper towel here, and I'm just carefully wiping off the surface to get any kind of grit off. Then I cut off the stems, and then I'm going to cut these in half, unless they're really big pieces. Now we're going to cut up our peppers and get those ready to go on the skewers. I find it's easy just to slice it in half, remove the center part, and then I'm going to try to cut this up into even 1-inch pieces, much like I did with the chicken. Then we're going to do our orange pepper, followed by the yellow pepper. And now the zucchini. Again, you just want to cut these into even pieces, much like with the chicken, so that it'll cook thoroughly. I'm using a Vidalia onion here, which has a really nice sweet flavor to it, especially when you cook it up on the grill. The high heat kind of makes it caramelize a little bit. You want to cut this very carefully to try to preserve the layers of onion together so that you can have a thick chunk to put onto your skewer. We're going to use a little bit of corn on the cob as well, which really tastes good when you grill it. Okay, so we've let the skewers soak and now we're ready to thread on, alternating with our vegetables and our chunks of chicken. Those can get a little messy, so I recommend being careful, make sure you have a big work surface in front of you. It might be good to wear an apron too. Now it's important to try to leave space in between the meat and vegetables. If you pack everything too close, then the center of the meat isn't going to cook. So just try to be conscious of that as you thread things on. Leave a little bit of airspace in between. And I always like to start and end it with a vegetable. That way you have something to hold on to rather than the meat as you pick it up for the first time. And just repeat until you use up your materials. Now in this case I had some vegetables left over, and I think that should be your goal because you should always have more vegetables on your plate than meat. So I have these great grill baskets which people can use for kebabs, and you just fill it up with your leftovers. It's got wires all along the sides so they won't fall through. And this just will help me have an extra serving of vegetables for each of my guests. Okay, before I heat up the grill, I'm going to spray it down with vegetable oil. This one happens to be made for grilling specifically. And I don't use this every time I grill, but I do when I have chicken, because chicken has a tendency to stick. And that kind of tears it up a little bit when you pull it off. I'm going to heat it up, put the lid down so that it'll reach a medium to medium-high heat. Something in the 450 to 500 degree range if your grill has a reliable thermometer. When the grill's heated, we're just going to put the kebabs on handle side out so that I'll be able to retrieve it. And you want to make sure that you give a little bit of space in between each of your kebabs. You don't want to crowd it too much, or again, it'll take longer and it won't cook as evenly. I like to cover it up and give it 3 minutes, spin it. Keep doing that until it looks like your chicken's almost done. When you think you have one that's ready, pull it out and put it on a clean surface. I'm going to cut delicately into the chicken. And you want to make sure that the meat is not pink on the inside and that the juices are clear. Once you find one that's done, you should feel what that texture feels like, and it'll help you to judge the rest of them so that you don't have to cut each one open. As you cut it open, the juices do release, and that leads to dry chicken. So I usually go by the squeeze test. Once I know how I want the meat to feel, the first one that I have guaranteed is done, I just do the other ones by feel. I'm going to give them a final sprinkle of salt and pepper. This is kind of optional, but I think it's good for the vegetables, which we didn't really marinate in this case. And here are the rest of my vegetable kebabs. And here we have it, our citrus tarragon chicken kebabs with fresh summer vegetables.